right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything by the great master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away what's taking place. They did with my Bible study that Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, the spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, you have one of your defectors. He says, that Morneau guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists, the people that the master hates most on the face of the earth. And the high priest almost had a heart attack. Because he said, I kind of like you. He said, that's what he told my friend. Because I didn't see him after that. But he told my friend to try to convince me to go back, to spirit worship.
Roger, you were 72 hours away from making a full commitment to the elite spirit worship. How did God rescue you at that strategic moment?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you doing today? God bless you. This is the part 2 of the video I uploaded yesterday. The journey into the occult world and into the supernatural. The experience of Roger Morneau, the man who at the age of 20 was led into the path of the occult. Started from the fact that they wanted him to speak to his dead mother, to the fact that he got the true condition of what they were doing, that it was actually familiar spirits that they have been speaking to. And then he was chosen. It was among the few humans that were chosen at the time to represent the deepest occult world. And he ventured into the worship of spirits and several other things. I know that not everybody would want to watch, given the fact that it is long and it has no fanfare stories like, Prophet Jeremiah Omoto Fufenyi has done this one, Suleiman has done that one. That is not the story here now. But if you want to actually gain insight, wisdom, the Bible says that wisdom is the principal thing. And in all you're getting, get understanding. Now, when you have knowledge and you apply it with the understanding, you have the understanding to apply it, that is wisdom. All right. I did a video here last time where I was telling people that when you claim that you saw the dead, it wasn't the dead that you saw. I told a lot of stories and real life stories and backed it up with the scriptures. But I know that there are people who said no, that they have had such experience. They have, they have seen the dead and they have heard the stories. I want you to understand that if you have been told the story of a man that died in Uganda and he went to Mali to set up a family, I'm sure you have not seen it yourself. That story was told to you. It remains a myth. Now, even if whereby you were the one that experienced it yourself, you did not have encounter with that person. You had an encounter with familiar spirits, what this man called friendly spirits. All right. So this is part 2 of that video, part 2 of it. I encourage you to watch, like, and share. And God bless you. You see, I've always said, I said to somebody, any revelation that is not consistent with the word of God cannot be taken as the word of God. But then, the question now is, do you actually believe that the Bible is the word of God? Because recently we have seen people who are questioning the authenticity of the word of God. We've seen people who are saying that some of the things inside the Bible were ideas of human that was imported into the Bible. You see, so it depends on who you are and where you are at. If you're a believer and you're questioning the authority of the Bible, you are an unbeliever. If you're a pastor, you're questioning the authority of the Bible, you are an unbeliever. Now, when we talked about there are some persons that spoke, some other beings that spoke in the Bible that weren't God, it is true. But that doesn't make the Bible incorrect. The inspiration that was given to those who wrote the several books of the Bible that were combined as in called the book. Now, that inspiration came from God, and God allowed those experiences that the snake spoke in the Bible, murderers spoke in the Bible, harlots, prostitutes spoke in the Bible, possessed demons spoke, people spoke in the Bible. Unbelievers spoke in the Bible. Gentiles and Jews spoke in the Bible. Herod and Pharaoh spoke in the Bible. Magicians, we are seen, performing their magics in the Bible. Even an animal spoke in the Bible. Oh yes, that is true. But that inspiration that was given to the people that wrote it, and God permitted them to know those things and put them down, it makes it authentic. That is why the Bible says that all scriptures are God-breathed. They are God-inspired. So if we have anybody that is doubting the authority of the Bible, you have not met Christ. When you meet the Christ of the Bible, you won't have that doubt. Okay, so I'm not going to speak anymore in this one. I will let you watch the video. Watch it, pay rapt attention. You will understand where there are, salient points for you to pick. It will be highlighted. Thank you so much, and God bless you. I will be seeing you in the next video, possibly in the part 3 of this one. Till then, from me to you, shalom. You are welcome to the End Time Truth Television, the channel for the lovers of truth, for the truth of the end time. So if you are a lover of truth, give us a subscription, and God bless you. Shalom.
Friendly spirits, just to digress for just a moment, you mentioned 3 different categories, and the friendly spirits are the ones that love to impersonate being a historian or something.
We specialize in that.
In your experiences in the praise services or in the worship room or the other places where you were, any of the places you were, did you ever witness an event where necromancy or even something that would be popularly called channeling today took place, where you actually heard the voice of someone in response to someone's questions?
A number of times, but there was one time in particular that fascinated me because it was unique in one way. The priest told us that there was a French historian that was affiliated with Montreal, University of Montreal, which is a French university, and the English university is McGill. So the University of Montreal is the French university. And this man was from Paris, but he's affiliated with the university. And he wanted to have some details in regards to Napoleon Bonaparte and one of his generals. So, by the way, there are also, in other parts of the world, elite spirit worshippers like the group that we had in Montreal. And he mentioned there that, he said, you guys are fortunate when my friend and I went in, because you're right in time to see something very interesting. My friend there is having his devotions in the worship room of the gods, and he will use a trance medium to converse with certain demon spirits that will inform him in regards to ancient history about Napoleon. And sure enough, we went down there, and somebody came up and said he's ready to for the session, and we went down there, and he said he would need 3 people. You would need 3 people, but he wanted 5 people that volunteer to be the channel for the spirit. Okay, so he was 3 of them were chosen there, and he had to go back and sit down. And the man shook his head like, a little bit like this. His eyes went glazed, and he stayed at it for a half hour. And the spirit spoke to him. He said, I'm a spirit counselor, and what would you like to know? And he had a clipboard, the historian, and asked him some questions.
This historian was from Paris.
Yeah.
And he was wanting information,
some detailed information
about Napoleon
Bonaparte and one of his generals.
And so he asked the questions of one of these human beings that was channeling.
Oh yeah, the voice changed and everything. The voice changed of the person completely.
Okay. And it identified itself as a spirit guide.
Oh yeah, spirit counselor, yeah.
Okay, a spirit counselor. And then proceeded to tell him all the events that he was asking, answer his questions?
And there was a certain question that was asked, and the spirit counselor said, I will have Lord Remy and Lord Alphonse duplicate, in other words, the dialogue that had taken place.
Oh,
and
the 2 other drama.
Yeah, and the 2 other men fulfilled what he was looking for. But the one thing that interests me is the mayor of Montreal, Camillien Hood. During World War II, at the beginning of the war, he was very controversial when it regards to the war effort. He would tell the French-speaking boys not to go into the armed service, see, because you're going to go and shed your blood for the British, you know, and we're their servants, so to speak, and all that, and he didn't want them to go into war, and they put him in prison. He was jailed for the length of the war for this. Now, the man said, I would like to have you tell me to the Spirit to give me part of the speech that was given by Camillien Hood on the steps of the Montreal City Hall on a certain date. There are different versions of what has taken place, and you, Lord, would know the exact one.
Now, the mayor of Montreal was still alive.
Was still alive.
And this historian is asking what was actually said at a speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Spirit Counselor said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. All of my activities and my people have taken place in Europe. However, after my departure, our departure, other spirits will come and help you. And sure enough, the guy vibrated a little bit, and he's back, and he said, boy, how long? He said, 20 minutes, been used as a channel. So they, again, the Spirit entered into him, and the Spirit said he was a Spirit Counselor that could give him the information that he was looking for. So, again, it was given verbally, and it was the voice of Camillien Hood.
Now, how did you know that it was the voice?
Well, because of the fact, you see, I was a youngster in those days, just about ready to go into the army. And Camillien, we used to listen to the radio. We had no television in those days, so it was only radio, and read newspaper. And all the speeches of Camillien made, and all of it was on the radio all the time. And in those days, they had no tape recorders, as we have now. So Camillien would have to go to the Canadian Broadcasting Studio, where they made a record, a real phonograph record. And then they played it over and over, for the rest of the day.
So you listened to those as a teenager before you went into the Army, so you knew his voice.
So I knew his voice really good. So I said to George, he was sitting next to me, he said, isn't it amazing? He said, if you think that's amazing, wait, he says, until the spirits impersonate one of the departed people that you know, personally, like an uncle or a brother or a sister or something like that. He says, that is unique. But that's the way it was. You are able to reproduce a voice, man, and just to perfection. The spirits are exceedingly proud of this. Because, and this also was right up my alley, the priest said that as the times on this planet gets more and more difficult, and calamities of all kinds are striking the planet more and more frequently, demon spirits are going to impress people with the importance of Sunday sacredness.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius. And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age, and I wondered if back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days. And the priest told us, we talked quite a while, and then he said, could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to do something very fascinating. He says, the grand plan, the Master's grand plan, for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grand plan is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about them.
In other words, so persons, there's some persons are supposed to be able to, you know, they believe in their immortal soul.
Astral soul projection.
Yes, right. Goes into different parts of the world and sees things and come back, and then they write all about it. You know.
I've heard of that.
So, due to the fact that the millions of the earth people believe in people having an immortal soul, it has to be readily accepted when the spirits will, through a trance medium, converse with influential people of the land, you see.
Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah.
Okay.
Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved with spiritism and with the supposed inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies, I taped the whole thing in 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it would cause it to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be, well, there'll be no more wars, you see. There'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. There'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise.
Almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of...
and he used the words New Age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently, the spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? He will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. One person asked, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest says, there'll be no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. He says the laws will be passed with no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the venerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All of these great nations and other nations of smaller ones were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I would never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the 7th day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. You see? And regardless of what people claim to worship, worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now, at that time in your life, you were 20 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
Had you ever heard of a Seventh-day Adventist?
Never in my life.
In that
They
meeting,
didn't talk about Seventh-day Adventist. They talked strictly about Adventist.
well, they just talked, but they did. The word Adventist
Yeah.
was mentioned.
The priest was telling us that necromancy, as I mentioned earlier, is the belief that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence, etc. And he says, for centuries, friendly demon spirits have worked diligently to establish and uphold in the religious convictions of all people the belief that man has an immortal soul. See? Then he boasted about the fact that the master was so smart in that he had deceived the whole world, even in this age of great scientific knowledge and understanding. Then one person put his hand up, and that priest says, yeah, yes, we want to say something? He says, what about the Adventists? You can't count them deceive regarding the state of the dead. And I got a question. What about, how come that they can't be brought under the great deception? The priest said, you're right. I apologize, says here, I made a mistake. When I said that all the millions of people living on the face of this planet, everybody, you know, was honoring the great master. I forgot the Adventists. They're so few in number, when you figure the billions and all people, I didn't even think of mentioning them. So I'm sorry. Then he says, secondly, the reason why they can't be brought under the great deception, let me explain about it. Now he said, my next statement is going to upset some of you. But what I'm telling you is the honest truth. It is factual. It's reality. The fact that the Adventists observe the biblical Sabbath of creation and reverence the Creator on that day, it makes it impossible for the spirits to deceive them. They are giving very special help and great spiritual insight. And he said, under these conditions, they are not ordinary people. And that stayed with me, man, just like this. And when I heard the word Adventist, when Sarah told me later on, which we're going to cover later, I asked him, I said, what denomination do you belong to? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. What is that again? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. I said, is that the same thing as Adventist? Oh yeah, he says, a lot of people call us the Adventists. They don't talk about the 70s. Same thing. Boy, I was interested.
I bet you were. Now,
I wanted to know what his Bible said.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Things.
Because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house. Yeah. The thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, you know, forever. But you see, The time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening. We started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had this Bible study similar to what you have, what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.
Roger, at that time, your major language was French. You did not speak English, and all of this happened in the French language in Montreal. How long after you became a Seventh-day Adventist, or after you learned of Seventh-day Adventists, did you read the book Great Controversy by Ellen White?
Well, I joined the church. I first had a Bible study in October of '46. In April of '47, I was baptized into the church. In September of that year, Hilda and I got married. And the French church in Montreal gave us, as a wedding gift, the Conflict of the Ages series. And I had not read the Great Controversy up to then.
But then you read it.
Yeah.
And what went through your mind when you read the book Great Controversy, thinking back on the experience you'd had maybe just a year or so before?
That's right.
What went through your mind?
This person is inspired. This person has got knowledge that nobody else has on the face of the earth, except, the Spiritist that I was mentioning, because it's so unique. See?
Well, I find it very remarkable that they were willing to share the strategy that Satan is working on with this group. Of course, their plan was that it would never get out.
That's right.
Under seal of death.
That's right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything by the great master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away what's taking place. They did with my Bible studies on Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, the spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, "You have one of your defectors." He says, "That Morneau guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists, the people that the master hates most on the face of the earth." And the high priest almost had a heart attack. Because he said, "I kind of like you." He said, "That's what he told my friend." Because I didn't see him after that. But he told my friend, tried to convince me to go back, to spirit worship.
Roger, you were 72 hours away from making a full commitment to the elite spirit worship. How did God rescue you at that strategic moment?
Well, I'll tell you, I should really go back a couple of weeks in time. As the high priest had talked to us about the advantage of getting initiated in the society on the 31st of October, that night I came home, went to bed, and I couldn't sleep till about 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I had all of this experience of the supernatural that I'd gone through for so many months now, and my Catholic upbringing that I've had, and questions about God. Now I knew there's a God, because the Spiritist made me well aware of that. But I was in a state of terrible unrest. I could not have slept. And without even giving it a thought, somehow, I said, as I was laying on my bed, I said, "If there's a God up there that cares for me, help me." That's all I said. Next thing I knew, the alarm clock rang. It was 6:30. It was time for me to get up and go to work. At that time, I had changed employment. I had taken a course in embroidery for the manufacturers of ladies' dresses in Montreal. There's embroidery companies that makes all this, the piping and sequins work and all of this, fancy designs,
sure,
ladies' dresses. And that's where I was working at the time.
You were just 72 hours away, as Karen mentioned a moment ago. You had prayed, without even realizing what you were doing. God was about to rescue you in a very special way. Tell us about that. What happened that Monday morning?
Well, let's go back to the Friday.
Okay.
Previous to that. I was working for a Jewish firm. And the bosses, one kept the Sabbath, and the other didn't. And Harry, which was the one that didn't, as I was going out to have my cigarette at the afternoon break, he said, Roger, when you come back in, come into my office, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. I came back in, and he said, close the door. I closed the door. He said, I want you to do me a favor. Oh? What do you mean? Well, I'll tell you what. He said, you notice yesterday or a couple of days ago, there was a fellow here that I showed around the shop? And, yeah, I said, yes. Well, he's going to be starting to work here Monday. And he's not just an average guy. He's a Christian, but keeps the Bible Sabbath. I said, go over that again? He says, yes. Like the Jewish people, he keeps the 7-day Sabbath. Saturday is the 7th day of the week. Well, I said, let me tell you, sir, the nuns have told us that there's been a mistake made in the calendar, that actually what shows to be Sunday is the 7th day of the week. Oh, no, he says, there wasn't no mistake made in the calendar, he says. Saturday is the 7th day of the week, and you see it on your calendar, and he says it never was changed. And Sunday is the 1st day of the week. Oh, and I said, that's interesting. I said, I'm going to have to go to the library and check this out. Oh, you don't have to, he says. He pulled out his desk drawer open, pulls out his big dictionary, and he looks up Saturday. And he said, the 7th day of the week. And looked at it on Sunday, and he said, the 1st day of the week. Okay. Well, I said, that's pretty interesting. Now, here's what I'd like you to do for me. I'd like you to, first of all, I'm going to have this man work next to you, on the machine next to you. And don't tell him that I want to know what denomination he belongs to. You got to be very tactful. You have all the time in the world, even if it takes a month, he says. He says, I tell you what, he says, it's the craziest thing, he says, that I've been thinking about this guy, and I can't get him out of my mind, about the fact he's a Christian and keeps the 7th-day Sabbath, keeps the Bible Sabbath. And he said, I got more important things to think about than stuff like that. So he said, I want to find out what denomination he belongs to, and I just did. I said, why didn't you ask him? Well, he said, no, I wouldn't do that. That's too personal. Okay.
So he wanted you to ask him and find out for him.
Find out and not let him know that the boss was interested to know. So Monday morning came, and the new fellow came in, and the boss introduced him to the people. There was about maybe 50 people working in that plant. And he said, Cyril's an accomplished embroiderer. We'll be very happy to have him here with us, and made a little speech. Then he walked him to his new machine, and he says, Roger, meet Cyril, and I shook his hand, and we started to work. And it was not more than about 20 minutes that I was working that my machine started to skip stitches. So what happened? You have to stop and back up where you were. And I was working on sequence. In other words, the sequence come up. There's a row of thread behind it. They're all set up, and it's on a spool. And then the needles put them in there. And when it skips, you got to stop, back up, start over it from where it left off. It wasn't too long that I'd done this 2 or 3 times.
And that really made you happy, I bet.
Man, I was mad. And as a French person, usually they don't go easy on the saints and gods. That was using some language was not that great for Cyril. But anyway, I called the boss over. I said, come and see this machine. I'm having trouble with it. He checked it, worked on it for 5 minutes, work with it. Beautiful. I sit down again, start to work, the same thing happens over again. Harry, after he tried that 2 or 3 times, he said, Joe, come over. He's the old guy that knows everything about everything, in the shop. So he looks at the tensions and adjusts things, and he says, it's working beautiful. Well, I started to work again, another 20 minutes after, same thing, and I had to stop the whole thing. By then, it was time to go out for the coffee break.
Cyril and Cynthia, so good to have you folks come down and visit with us for a short time today. And Cyril, I want to start off our visit by just asking you about an experience you had, I believe, almost 45 years ago.
That's right.
You had gone to work at a new embroidery shop in Montreal, Canada. And there was a guy that was at the next machine to you that first day you went there. Did you notice anything strange about him?
Yes, I did notice he had some peculiarities that, well, to say the least, they were different. First of all, when he worked at his machine, when he had a little malfunction, he knew how to, well, criticize the machine by using some language that was quite offensive to me, at least. He would curse at the machine, and in both French and English. He was quite a linguist. And when my machine would break, he noticed that I would just fix it and keep on working. There was a difference, and he noticed a difference himself. We were both behaving differently when our machines didn't function right.
Now, so that very first day, there were problems with the machines. Your machine and his machine had problems.
They both had problems.
But you had a chance at the break time to get acquainted with him. And how did he approach you?
Well, he approached me with a question, sort of. He said, I noticed that when your machine gives trouble, you don't get angry. You just fix it and keep on working. And I told him, well, it didn't make sense to get angry with the machine. It's an inanimate object. And he sort of apologized for his getting angry with his machine. And we started a conversation there, and it gave me the opportunity to sort of introduce him to some of the things I had experienced just a few days before.
And what were the things that you had just experienced a few days before?
I was getting some Bible studies from a minister named Elder Warren Taylor. And although I wasn't an Adventist, I was quite moved by those Bible studies because of the fact that as he gave the Bible studies, he kept it quite simple. And he would prove everything he would say, even if it's from the Bible, he would prove it. And in some cases, he proved it from worldly books such as the Encyclopedia Britannica. And he gave good evidence of everything that he was saying was true.
So I started walking out, and I told Sarah, I said, have you ever seen such a crazy thing as this, the trouble that I have with this machine? No, he said, it's a new machine. I said, brand new machine, just a month old. He said, that's very unusual. So we go downstairs, and I said, do you have any suggestions how to fix this problem? No, not really, but he says, I have a suggestion that might help. He says, I heard you, he says, calling upon God, but it was not in the way that I would have liked to hear you talk. He says, go easy on God, he says.
Did that offend you, Roger?
You know, I said, thank you. It did not offend me, because he was pleasant about it. And I said, you know, I said, thank you. I said, I'm sorry if I offended you by my language. He says, it didn't bother me. I said, by the way, I said, this is the opening. You're quite a religious man, I understand. Yeah, he says, I read the Bible and go to church. That's great. I said, what denomination do you belong to? Well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Excuse me? Repeat that again? He says, yeah, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
Did that shock you?
Well, the word Adventist shocked me. The Adventist, you see, I had heard so much about the Adventist, but Seventh-day Adventist I had never heard the name before. I said, what does it signify, the name? He says, well, we're seven-day observers. We believe in the Bible Sabbath, that God has blessed a particular day of the week and has sanctified it. It's put a special blessing on there, and that we ought to count our blessings on the seventh day and, you know, give God the honor that is due to his holy name. Is that any difference between what they call, some people call the Adventists and Seventh Adventists? Oh no, it's just the same people. Most people just talk about the Adventists, and you know, people know that they're talking about the Seventh Adventists.
Then your interest was really piqued.
Now I said, man, what a unique thing to have happened to me, that I meet one of these guys.
You're together out there at your first break time, and you're discussing the language on the job when the machines had broken down, but you had an opportunity to begin to share some of this newfound faith that you had been discovering.
Right.
Did you find him to be interested, open?
Well, what really happened was he would ask questions, and I found out later that the reason he asked questions was when I went to get the job, I was so impressed with Elder Taylor's Bible studies that I told the employer right away that I didn't work on the Sabbath. He said, well, that's all right. You don't have to work on Sunday at all. I said, no, Saturday. So being a Jew, he became rather interested. And he told Roger, Roger told me later on, check this fellow and find out why he keeps my Jewish Sabbath. So Roger's questions were motivated by the fact that he was told to check. And the more questions Roger would ask, the more interested he became himself. So as he became more interested, and I told him more, he suddenly said, I want to hear more about your religion. And I said, okay, this weekend. He said, no, tonight.
So we talked about a number of things. And after lunch, I told him, I said, I want to see you at 3 o'clock. Again, I want to have another question for you. So 3 o'clock came along, we had the coffee break, and many things had passed through my mind. And I knew that if I get involved with religion, the Spirit is going to destroy me. So I've been assured, we've all been assured of that. You don't deviate from the will of the spirits, otherwise you're nothing, your history. So I told him, I said, Cyril, would you show me out of the Bible the things you told me today if I went to your house? He says, yeah. Yeah, he says, yeah, I'd be glad to. He says, when, next week sometime? No, not next week, tonight.
Did he look surprised when you said that?
Yeah, he's surprised. He said, what's the big hurry? I said, I can't tell you why. But it has to be tonight or never. He said, you serious? I said, yeah. And you can't tell me why it has to be tonight? I'll tell you the reason why. He says, I would like to have you come another night. Because I have my collection of jazz records that somebody's coming to look over. He had been collecting jazz records for years. And he said, I have somebody's interested to buy them. But he said, well, I said, well, forget about it then. And he said, man, he said, you really mean what you say? That you want to see these things in the Bible? I said, sure. Okay, he says, come to my place 7 o'clock tonight. Give me his address. So that evening, 7 o'clock sharp, I rang the doorbell.
Did that startle you?
It startled me because it was fortunate I had 28 Bible studies for busy people, something I just bought. And I ran home, Cynthia and I were married at this time. And I ran home and I told Cynthia, we have to give some Bible studies because this fellow's coming tonight. So I went through the first couple of Bible studies as quickly as I could and got myself familiarized with them. And we got all ready, and sure enough, he came. And we sat in that room, the room that we talked about that burned, and we started those Bible studies. And he was very interested.
Cynthia, that first night that you had your Bible studies with Roger, how many studies did you actually do with him?
We did 4.
On the first night?
On the first night. We started promptly at 7, and as we went through, and we went through with everything in detail, in full detail. And we thought that, oh, this is just going to last the evening, and that would be the end of it. And then he said, no, he says, let's do the next one. So each one, so we didn't finish until about 11:30 or quarter to 12. And when we finished, he'd sit around and talk. By the way, he was a chain smoker. The room was covered with smoke. We could hardly see the Bibles in our laps. And we had discussed this prior about him smoking. And so we decided, we prayed about it, and we asked the Lord that even though each time he came, the room was just heavenly, full of smoke, that we will read his word and that he will take care of the smoke. And I happen to be allergic to cigarette smoke, and we were all huddled together. It was really something to see us.
28 Bible studies in a period of 1 week, 7 days.
7 days, 4 hours a night.
4 hours per evening, yeah.
28 Bible studies.
Now, they didn't plan this. So, as we chatted, and I just met Cynthia, now, Cyril told me, I got to explain things to you a little bit. I am not a baptized member of the Seventh Adventist Church. I'm just studying into the church doctrines. with the minister. He says, my wife is a Seventh Adventist. But he said, now I think I'm going to be baptized also be a Seventh Adventist. But I said, I'm not one right now. Now he says, my wife is the one that really knows the Bible. I don't know much about it. And I think that she's got the right study for us tonight. He says, it'll take about an hour. Can you spare that much time? Oh, I said, evening is yours. Well, she had a set of Bible studies that were entitled 28 Bible Studies for Busy People. That was the title of the series. She pulled one out and she says, now we could see here, there's the different questions. The first one was on the Word of God. And she read the question and said, then we can find the verses in the Bible that gives us the answer. And the next question, she said, would you like that? I said, beautiful. That's cool. So Cyril was sitting next to me with his Bible because he was able to find where it was. I had never opened a Bible in my life. Never. So, because I never had access to it. Let's put it this way. And that's where it started, on the Word of God. After the Bible thing was over, he says, well, did you find it interesting? I said, most interesting, very interesting. I said, what's the next study coming up? Well, he said, the next study, Daniel 2, prophecy of Daniel the prophet, 2, on the world events, you know, predicting the different great world empires that were to come into existence in times ahead. And I said, really? That's very interesting. I said, how long would that one take? Oh, she'll take about an hour. He says, you have between 20 to 25 questions, he says, you know. So I said, let's have it now. Oh, well, she said, no. She said, when could you come back? I said, why come back?
Did she look surprised?
She looks very surprised because she looked at her husband. And he looked at me. And I said, hey, you guys like the Bible or are you getting tired? No, we like to study the Bible. I said, let's have another Bible study. It's only 8 o'clock, you see.
And at that time you were a smoker, weren't you?
Oh, a smoker. You can say that again. I was like a chain smoker, you see. And when I had accomplished something worthwhile, I used to reward myself with a cigar 2 or 3 times a week. And this is what the love of God, the power of the love of God operates in the lives of those that the Lord is trying to bless, and in the lives of those that are bringing the blessing. Now, this did not take place. First of all, we kept on studying. We had 4 Bible studies that evening. And when it came to 9 o'clock, we had Daniel 2 over with. I said, what's the next Bible study? And she said, well, the one that we're going to have, will you come on the weekend? Could you come on the weekend? I said, yeah. I said, I can come on the weekend. What is the title of it? She gave me the title. I said, man, that's interesting. It's only 9 o'clock. Let's have it now. So Cyril looks at her, you know, with very surprised look on his face. And Cynthia, she looked at him. And I said, what's going on between the two of you? It's like you have a conspiracy that says that we're not going to study the Bible with this guy more than, you know, than an hour or 2. But she said, let me be honest with you. Our minister, Pastor Taylor, has been giving us instruction on how to give Bible studies. Because Cynthia says, you know, I never have given Bible studies. And we really wanted to know how to give Bible studies to people that ask us the reason of the hope that is in us. And he's told us exactly how to do it. You have 1 Bible study per week. If the people are exceedingly interested, you could have 1 in the middle of the week, the other one. But never more than that. And she says, we've already passed our quota.
So the reason, Roger, for their hesitancy was not the fact that you were blowing smoke in their face.
Oh, no.
It was because they were trying to follow the instructions that their pastor had given, and you were asking them to break all those rules.
That's right.
Do you think they could sense your urgency?
Sarah and Cynthia told me later, yes. They said there's something very unusual about this man, Cynthia told her husband, because they went to get water, and to get me a glass of water, and she went in the kitchen to get something else, whatever it is, and she said, what do you think of him? And Cyril said, there's something very unusual about this man. He said, you want to study the Bible? Let's study the Bible. We won't tell about Elder Taylor. Let's not say a word to Elder Taylor. You know, we're going to ruin the whole thing.
You're going to keep it a secret.
Because the minister had said, you know, you give people a spiritual indigestion, and they'll never want to open the Bible again. You understand?
But this shows that there are some times when someone's
Yeah.
appetite for it is
Right.
so strong
Yeah.
that you have to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, yeah, that's it. And they had prayed about this thing. Now, Cyril had told his wife, this man is coming for Bible study at 7 o'clock tonight for a Bible study. And he smokes. He's a smoke fiend. What are we going to do? Should we tell him not to smoke in our home? He said, if we do that, I'm afraid he's not going to stay for the Bible study.
What would have happened if they had asked you not to smoke?
I would have said, I'm sorry. You're not my kind of people. You see, you're too reserved for me. I'm sorry. And still to this day, I thank God for the leading of the Holy Spirit that at that crucial time moved in there and inspired these people to say, you know, wouldn't you die, Cyril, for us to save us all for Christ? Cynthia said to her husband. He said, yeah. It's not going to kill us, even if we inhale all the smoke that he puts out, right? Because they had prayed about it, and then they had thought about it, and then when it came to be 7:15, he said, what are we going to do about the smoking? Are we going to tell him not to smoke or what? And then when she came out and she said, you know, let's put up with it. Well, we had that third Bible study. Now it's 10 o'clock. And I said, by the way, what's the next title? And she told me about it. My goodness, this is a beautiful Bible study. I said, let's have it. And he said, you know, really, Roger, we've studied too much tonight. We're never going to be able to remember these things. Oh, I said, you'd be surprised. I got a mind like a sponge for the things that I like. He said, you're enjoying yourself. I said, never heard anything like this in my life. Let's have another study. What time do you people go to bed? First of all, I don't want to, you know, infringe on your regular habits of resting yourselves. And, well, he said, we go to bed 11 o'clock. Beautiful. I said, go on, Cynthia. And Cyril says, go on, Cynthia. And we had another Bible study. Now the Bible studies are over. And I said to myself, if I'm still alive, I want to be here tomorrow night.
Did you seriously doubt whether you would be alive the following night?
I felt sure I was going to be killed, going to be destroyed in some kind of an accident. Because I've heard of so many cases. So I knew that I was not, this is the way I felt. I was not going to be alive tomorrow night. If for some reason I'm alive, I want to be back here with study the Bible with these people, see. So I said, what are you people doing tomorrow night? Not too much. What about 7 o'clock? Another Bible study. And she looked at her husband, and he looks at her, you know, and he said, hey, we won't tell Elder Taylor. We won't tell him a word about it.
We'll just do it.
We'll just do it. He says, we'll be here at 7 o'clock tomorrow night waiting for you. The next night, man, I was there. 4 more Bible studies. See? And more smoke.
This has been part 1 of A Trip into the Supernatural, an interview with best-selling author Roger Morneau, as conducted by Dan and Karen Houghton of Heart Research Center. The conclusion of this exclusive interview is contained in part 2.
Footsteps walking down his hall. He lived at the end of a long hall, and his door was the only door down that hall. And the footsteps would stop at his door. Then a rap would come to the door. And at midnight, we heard the footsteps coming down the hall. I said, Roger, put your hand on the doorknob and get ready to pull it open. And so with all the bravado that I could muster with a gun, I waited for the rap on the door, and there it came.
Heart Research Center presents Part 2 of A Trip into the Supernatural with best-selling author Roger Morneau. In Part 1 of this exclusive interview, Roger Morneau told about his experiences with Satanism as a young man. Joining him again in Part 2 are Cyril and Cynthia Grossi, who helped Roger break away from the power of darkness to discover a loving God. Conducting this interview are Dan and Karen Houghton of Heart Research Center. Let's now watch the conclusion of A Trip into the Supernatural.
We continued to give him Bible studies with the smoke and all. And we got down to the Bible study where health, diet and health. And
Body temple.
Body temple. And he was fascinated with that. And so we finally told him that, I think there's a text that when men turn away from God, they turn to the bitter weed.
Bitter herb.
Or herb or something. So we like the bitter herb to tobacco. And so he was fascinated with it. And he says, well, why didn't you tell me that you didn't smoke?
I think what really got him was the, when he read, know ye not that your body is a temple of God, and if any man defile the temple of God, him will God destroy. So he asked me, what do you mean by that? So my reply was, well, let's take the church. We all respect the church. Would you take a cigarette into the church and smoke it? He said, of course not. Then I said, would you take alcohol into the church and drink it? He said, no, that would be silly. And so by making those comparisons, finally I said, your body is the church. Your body is the temple. He said, am I smoking? I said, right. He said, why didn't you tell me this on the first night? I said, if I had told you this on the first night, you wouldn't come the second night. He said, you know, that's right. So you can see where patience is a virtue. If you use patience and take your time, it pays off.
He told us that he realized he was getting into demon worship to the point where it was scaring him. He was frightened. And he prayed a prayer to God, even though he didn't realize it, and it wasn't with all the trappings that Christians usually use. But he said, if there is a God in heaven, help me. And at that time, you were an answer to his prayer.
That's right.
But also, wasn't he an answer to your prayer?
He certainly was. When Elder Taylor got to the point in his Bible studies of speaking about the Sabbath, all of my background, I was born in Halifax, Cynthia was born in Montreal. All of my background was Baptist and some Methodist. And I couldn't see going to church on Saturday instead of Sunday. In fact, I would laugh at my wife for quite some time, even as a child, the fact that she was going to church on the wrong day. But getting back to the point is, when we were taking those Bible studies and Elder Taylor got to the Sabbath question, he proved it, and yet I didn't believe it. And there's a point in your studying the Word of God that you want to stay with tradition rather than go with the truth. And I wanted to stay with tradition. But at the same time, the truth was pulling me back to the point where I said, I didn't even tell Cynthia this, Lord, if you want me to keep this Sabbath, let me, with the knowledge I have, win one soul. And if I do this, I know that it will be a sign. And not long afterward, I met Roger, sat down beside him, and he asked me for Bible studies. I know it was a sign. I'm here today.
What part did Cyril's conviction about the Sabbath truth play in you being confronted by Christ with these eternal realities? So I understand that he wasn't even a baptized Seventh-day Adventist. He was baptized the first Sabbath you went to church. But what if he had not been convicted of the Sabbath and had told your Jewish boss that he would be willing to work on the Sabbath?
Well, I would lose out on eternity, I believe. I would have lost hope.
So his conviction was part of the process that Christ used to confront you.
But there's more to this. He was working for a real nice firm, embroidery firm, and he was studying the Bible with Pastor Taylor, and Pastor Taylor had brought him now to the point where he said you should observe the seventh-day Sabbath. If you're going to, serve the Lord all the way, serve the Lord, serve Him all the way. The Lord says, if you love me, keep my commandments. The fourth commandment says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And the Lord says, why He wants us to keep it holy? Because He's God and we're the creatures, and that we ought to be counting our blessings, so to speak. Now Cyril was pondering this thing in his mind, and he said to himself, and he prayed about it, Lord, I want some kind of a sign that you're really with me in this, that you want me to start keeping the 7th Sabbath now. But Lord, there's something missing. I'll tell you what, if you make it possible for me to meet someone that doesn't know about the Sabbath, because not too many people know about it anyway, and that I'm able to convince him of the importance of the biblical Sabbath of creation, then he says, I'll know that you want me to start keeping a Sabbath now, instead of next year or some other time. And do you know that prayer was answered in 2 weeks? We figured out a time, about a time that I said, if there's a God in heaven that cares for me, help me. I think it's a couple of days after that he made a decision that, hey, Lord, show me. I just would like to enjoy the experience of knowing that you're listening to me and that you're doing something special for me. And I'm doing something special for you because I'm obeying your commandment.
So in reality, Roger, you were an answer to his prayers
yeah.
while you were still a Spiritist.
Mm-hmm.
Cyril, did you and Cynthia know at this time when you were studying with Roger that he was involved at all with spirit worship?
You know, the Lord blessed us mightily. He blessed us with the fact that we were completely ignorant of anything. And I would not advise anybody to openly go and do something like we did with having the knowledge that this person is a devil worshiper, because no person has the power to overcome this on their own. But I feel very impressed that the Lord, the Holy Spirit, guided us, and our eyes were covered until a certain time that we could handle it.
And when was that time, Cyril? When did you discover that this man worshipped demon spirits?
We discovered that midway between the lessons, and I don't know exactly what point it was, but one night he came, and we had previously studied on the unpardonable sin, and he came with tears in his eyes, and he was very upset, and he said he was upset, and he had books on his arm, and I said, well, what are you so upset about, Roger? Roger in French. And he said, well, you don't know what I've been doing. So I said, look, the Bible says all manner of sins will be forgiven. And he said, but you don't know what I've done.